Standing outside my own $2.3 million commercial building at midnight, watching my entire family throw what looked like a victory celebration inside, I felt my world crumble. The worst part was not the unauthorized party or the champagne bottles scattered across my marble floors. It was the giant banner hanging from the ceiling that read, "Welcome Home Ravenwood Family Legacy Building." My stomach dropped as I realized they actually believed they owned my property, the building I had bought with my own blood, sweat, and savings account. Before we dive into how my own flesh and blood tried to steal everything I worked for, I need to know where my fellow survivors are watching from tonight. Are you dealing with your own family drama right now? Hit that like button if you have ever felt betrayed by the people who were supposed to support you most, and make sure to subscribe because this story gets so much wilder than you could ever imagine. Trust me when I say the revenge I served was absolutely worth the wait. My name is Serafina, and 6 months ago, I thought I had the perfect family. Sure, we had our disagreements, but I believed blood was thicker than water. My parents, Margaret and Robert, had always been supportive of my real estate investment business. My younger brother, Dylan, seemed proud when I closed my first major commercial deal. Even my grandmother, Vivian, would brag to her bridge club about my success. The building in question was a beautiful 1920s Art Deco structure in downtown Portland that I had been eyeing for 2 years. When the previous owner finally agreed to sell, I liquidated nearly everything I owned to make it happen. The purchase price was $2.3 million, and I had saved every penny through years of flipping smaller properties, living in a tiny studio apartment, and working 18-hour days. The night I got the keys, I called my family to share the good news. Their reactions should have been my first warning sign. Instead of congratulations, my mother immediately started talking about how the building would be perfect for Dylan's struggling marketing agency. My father mentioned how the family had always dreamed of owning commercial real estate together. Grandmother Vivian even suggested we could turn it into the Ravenwood Family Business Center. I laughed it off at the time, thinking they were just excited for me. But over the following weeks, their comments became more persistent. Dylan started asking detailed questions about the building's layout and rental income potential. My parents began dropping hints about how family properties should benefit everyone. The red flags were everywhere, but I was too trusting to see them clearly. 3 months after the purchase, I decided to surprise everyone by inviting them to see the building properly. I had been working on renovations and wanted to show off the progress. We planned to meet there on a Saturday afternoon for a family tour, followed by dinner. But when Saturday arrived, I got stuck dealing with a plumbing emergency at one of my rental properties across town. I called to let them know I would be 2 hours late and gave my mother the building's security code so they could wait inside instead of standing on the street. That decision changed everything. When I finally arrived, I found the front door propped open and voices echoing from the main conference room. As I walked through the lobby, I noticed several cars in the parking lot that I did not recognize. The voices got louder as I approached the conference room, and I could hear my brother Dylan speaking in an authoritative tone I had never heard before. "The transition should be smooth since we already have all the documentation in place," he was saying. "Serafina has been managing the day-to-day operations, but the ownership transfer will make everything official." My blood ran cold. Ownership transfer. I pressed myself against the wall outside the doorway and listened. "I still think we should have told her from the beginning," my mother's voice said. "She put so much work into finding this place." "Margaret, we discussed this," my father replied firmly. "Serafina is young and inexperienced. She never would have agreed to put the property in the family trust if we had asked directly. This way, she gets to keep managing it while we handle the real business decisions." "But is it legal?" asked an unfamiliar voice. "Taking someone's property without their knowledge?" Dylan laughed. "It is not taking anything. Serafina used family money for part of the down payment. That automatically makes it a family asset according to the trust documents. Our lawyer confirmed everything." I felt like I was going to be sick. Family money I had saved every single dollar myself. The only family money I had ever received was $5,000 for college graduation, which I had paid back years ago. Besides, Grandmother Vivian's voice chimed in. What is Serafina going to do with a building this size anyway? She is just one person. This property belongs with people who can use it properly. The conversation continued, but I had heard enough. I quietly backed away and left the building, my mind racing. These people had somehow convinced themselves that my property belonged to them. Worse, they had apparently taken legal steps to make it happen. I spent the rest of the weekend in shock, trying to process what I had discovered. By Monday morning, I knew I had to take action. I called my real estate attorney, Miranda Hoffman, and explained the situation. Serafina, I need you to bring all your documentation to my office immediately, she said after hearing the basics. Purchase contracts, loan documents, bank statements, everything related to this property. Within hours, I was sitting in Miranda's office with a stack of papers spread across her conference table. She reviewed everything methodically, her expression growing more serious with each document. This is worse than I thought, she finally said. Someone has filed fraudulent paperwork claiming your building is part of something called the Ravenwood Family Trust. The documents are sophisticated enough that they fooled the county clerk's office initially. How is that possible? I asked. Because whoever did this had access to your personal information, your social security number, and details about the property purchase that only family members would know. They created a fake trust document dated before your purchase and filed it retroactively. The room started spinning. Can they actually take my building? Miranda's jaw tightened. Not if we act fast. But Serafina, this is not just a civil matter anymore. What your family has done constitutes fraud, forgery, and attempted theft of real property. We are talking about serious felony charges. I stared at the fake trust documents spread across the table. My own family had spent months planning to steal everything I had worked for. They had not just betrayed me. They had committed crimes against me. What do I do? I whispered. Miranda leaned forward. We fight back, and we make sure they face the consequences of what they have done. But I need to warn you, once we start this process, there is no going back. Your family will know exactly how you found out about their plan. I thought about that banner I had seen hanging in my building. Welcome home, Ravenwood Family Legacy Building. They were not just planning to steal from me. They were planning to celebrate doing it. Let us destroy them, I said. Miranda and I spent the next week building our case like we were preparing for war. Every fraudulent document, every forged signature, every lie my family had told was carefully cataloged and cross-referenced. The evidence was overwhelming, but Miranda wanted to be absolutely certain we had covered every angle before making our move. The beauty of their plan is also its biggest weakness, she explained during one of our strategy sessions. They were so thorough in creating fake documentation that they left a paper trail everywhere. Every forged document is evidence of multiple felonies, but catching them red-handed was only part of the solution. I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went and who else might be involved. Miranda suggested we hire a private investigator to monitor my family's activities and communications. The investigator, a former FBI agent named Marcus Torres, uncovered details that made my stomach turn. My family had been planning this theft for over a year, long before I had even found the building. They had researched property fraud techniques, consulted with a corrupt lawyer about trust law loopholes, and even practiced forging my signature until they could replicate it perfectly. The most devastating discovery was a series of text messages between my parents and brother discussing how naive and gullible I was. Dylan had written, Serafina actually thinks we are proud of her success. She has no idea we have been setting her up since she started making real money. My mother had responded, "I almost feel bad sometimes, but she will understand eventually. Family has to stick together, even if some members need guidance making the right decisions." Reading those messages felt like being punched in the chest repeatedly. These people had never been proud of me. They had been planning to rob me while pretending to support my dreams. But Marcus uncovered something even more disturbing. The corrupt lawyer helping my family, a man named Gregory Walsh, had used similar schemes to defraud at least 6 other victims over the past 5 years. He specialized in targeting young entrepreneurs whose families wanted access to their money. Walsh would create elaborate fake trust documents, then help families steal properties and business assets while making it look legal. "Your family is not just thieves," Marcus told me during his final briefing. "They are part of a criminal operation. Walsh has stolen millions of dollars from people just like you." This information changed everything. We were not just dealing with family betrayal anymore. We were uncovering a fraud ring that had destroyed multiple lives. Miranda immediately contacted the FBI and the State Attorney General's office. Within days, federal investigators were involved. Agent Sarah Kellerman, the FBI investigator assigned to the case, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in financial crimes. She reviewed our evidence and confirmed what we suspected: my family was part of a larger criminal conspiracy. "We have been tracking Gregory Walsh for 2 years," she told us. "He is sophisticated, but he always makes the same mistake. He gets greedy and goes after targets who are smart enough to fight back. Your family just handed us the evidence we needed to bring down his entire operation." Agent Kellerman proposed a plan that would allow us to catch everyone involved in the act. Instead of arresting my family immediately, we would let them proceed with their fake property transfer while federal agents monitored everything. When they inevitably tried to take possession of my building, we would have them on camera committing multiple federal crimes. "It means you will have to endure a few more weeks of their lies," Agent Kellerman warned me. "Can you handle pretending everything is normal while knowing what they are planning?" I thought about Dylan's text messages calling me gullible. "I have been pretending everything is normal for months. A few more weeks will not kill me." The plan required me to act completely oblivious while federal agents gathered additional evidence. I had to attend family dinners and smile while my parents discussed their business ventures. I had to listen to Dylan talk about his marketing agency's expansion plans, knowing he was planning to steal my building to house his failing company. The hardest part was dealing with my grandmother, Vivian. She had always been my favorite family member, the one who encouraged my independence and celebrated my achievements. Discovering that she was not just complicit but actively encouraging the theft broke something inside me that I was not sure could ever be repaired. During one particularly painful family dinner, Vivian actually had the audacity to lecture me about the importance of sharing success with family. "Serafina, dear, you have been so focused on your individual accomplishments lately. Remember that everything we achieve belongs to the whole family. We succeed together, or we fail together." I wanted to scream that I had succeeded alone while they plotted to steal from me, but I forced myself to nod and smile. "You are absolutely right, Grandma. Family is everything." Meanwhile, the federal investigation was expanding rapidly. Walsh's client list included dozens of corrupt family members who had used his services to steal from their own relatives. The FBI was building cases against all of them using my family's scheme as the cornerstone prosecution. Agent Kellerman kept me updated on their progress. "Your family has been very busy," she reported during one of our weekly meetings. "They have scheduled the fake property transfer for next month. Walsh has prepared all the fraudulent paperwork, and they have already started telling people they own a commercial building downtown." "What people?" I asked. "Business associates, friends, other family members. Your brother has been showing off photos of the building and claiming it belongs to the family now. Your parents have been discussing renovation plans like they already own the place." The sheer arrogance was breathtaking. They were not just planning to steal from me. They were already celebrating their theft publicly. There is one more thing, Agent Kellerman continued. We found evidence that your family has done this before. 5 years ago, they convinced your cousin Rachel to invest in a family restaurant, then used similar paperwork tricks to take ownership away from her. I remembered Rachel's restaurant. She had put her life savings into it, worked 18-hour days to make it successful, then suddenly sold everything and moved across the country. The family had always said she had a nervous breakdown, but now I realize they had probably stolen her business too. Rachel could not fight back because she did not have the resources for a legal battle, Agent Kellerman explained. But your case is different. You have the money, the evidence, and the determination to see this through. Taking down your family will help Rachel and everyone else they have victimized. By the end of that meeting, I understood my role completely. I was not just fighting for my own building. I was fighting for every person my family had ever betrayed. The weight of that responsibility was terrifying and motivating at the same time. The trap was set. All we had to do was wait for my family to walk into it. As the fake property transfer date approached, my family's behavior became increasingly bold and reckless. They stopped pretending to treat the building as mine and started making plans like they already owned it. Dylan brought contractors to walk through the space without asking my permission. My parents started talking openly about which businesses they wanted to recruit as tenants. Grandmother Vivian even suggested we hold the next family reunion in the building's main conference room. The most infuriating part was how they framed their theft as a favor to me. During one family dinner, my father actually said, "Serafina, you should be relieved that we are taking over the building management. Property ownership is a big responsibility for someone your age. Now you can focus on smaller projects while we handle the real business decisions." I had to excuse myself to the bathroom to keep from exploding. Standing in front of the mirror, I reminded myself that every condescending word was being recorded by the wire I was wearing for the FBI. Agent Kellerman had convinced me to wear surveillance equipment to family gatherings so they could capture my family's admissions of guilt. The recordings were devastating. In one conversation, my mother explicitly discussed forging my signature on transfer documents. "Gregory taught me how to make it look natural," she told my father. "Serafina will never know the difference." In another recording, Dylan bragged about how easy it had been to manipulate me. "She actually thanked us for showing interest in her business." He laughed. "If only she knew we were planning to take it from her the whole time." But the most damaging evidence came from an unexpected source, my grandmother's pride in the scheme. During a family dinner, she could not resist explaining the entire plan to my cousin Jennifer, who was visiting from out of state. "We have been so clever about this," Vivian whispered, not realizing I could hear her from the kitchen. "Serafina thinks she bought that building herself, but we made sure the paperwork shows it belongs to the family trust. She worked so hard to find the perfect property for us." Jennifer's shocked response was barely audible. "Aunt Vivian, does Serafina know about this?" "Of course not, dear. She would never agree to share something this valuable. But family takes care of family whether they understand it or not." When Agent Kellerman heard that recording, she actually smiled. "Your grandmother just confessed to conspiracy to commit fraud on tape. She also admitted they intentionally deceived you and planned to steal your property. Defense lawyers hate it when criminals explain their entire scheme out loud." The federal investigation had expanded beyond anything I could have imagined. Walsh, the corrupt lawyer, was connected to organized fraud rings in 3 states. His client list included politicians, business leaders, and dozens of families who had stolen millions from their own relatives. My case was becoming the centerpiece of a major federal prosecution. "We are calling it Operation Family Fortune," Agent Kellerman explained. "Your family's scheme is helping us expose an entire criminal network. When this goes to trial, it will be national news." The thought of my family drama becoming a national news story was both terrifying and satisfying. They had spent so much time bragging about their cleverness. Soon, the whole country would know exactly how clever they really were. But as the investigation intensified, I started receiving unexpected support from people I had never expected. My cousin Rachel, the one whose restaurant had been stolen years earlier, reached out after hearing rumors about federal investigators asking questions about our family. "Serafina, I need to tell you something," she said during a tearful phone call. "5 years ago, your parents and Dylan stole my restaurant using the same lawyer you are investigating. I could never prove it, but I lost everything. If you are fighting them, I want to help." Rachel's testimony provided crucial evidence about my family's previous crimes. She had saved documents from her restaurant case that showed the same patterns of fraud and forgery. More importantly, she could testify that my family had a history of stealing from relatives who trusted them. "They told me I was paranoid when I started asking questions about the paperwork," Rachel explained. "Your father said I was being ungrateful after everything the family had done for me. They made me feel crazy for thinking they would steal from me." Her story was heartbreakingly similar to what I was experiencing. The gaslighting, the false concern, the way they twisted family loyalty into a weapon against their victims. But Rachel had been isolated and financially devastated when it happened to her. I had resources, evidence, and federal agents on my side. Through Rachel, I also learned about other family members who had suspicions about my parents and Dylan, but had been afraid to speak up. My cousin Michael had always wondered how my parents afforded their expensive renovations on a middle-class income. My Aunt Susan had noticed that Dylan's failing business somehow always survived financial crises. Even some family friends had privately questioned the source of my family's sudden wealth over the past few years. "Everyone was afraid to ask questions because your parents are so good at making people feel guilty," Rachel told me. "But once you start fighting back, others will find the courage to tell the truth." She was right. As word spread that I was involved in a federal investigation, people started reaching out with information and support. A family friend revealed that my mother had bragged about teaching Serafina some business lessons she would never forget. A former employee of Dylan's company confirmed that he had been telling clients he was about to acquire a major commercial property that would transform his business. Even more satisfying was discovering that several of my family's friends and business associates were distancing themselves now that federal investigators were asking questions. The same people who had praised my family's success were suddenly too busy to return phone calls or attend social gatherings. Agent Kellerman used this social pressure to our advantage. "Criminals like your family depend on their reputation in the community," she explained. "When that reputation starts cracking, they make desperate decisions. Desperate decisions lead to more evidence." Sure enough, my family's behavior became increasingly erratic as they sensed something was wrong. Dylan started calling me multiple times a day asking strange questions about my building's finances and security systems. My parents began dropping hints about how family members should always support each other against outside threats. Grandmother Vivian even suggested I should be more careful about who I trusted with business information. The irony was suffocating. These people who had spent months planning to betray me were now worried that someone might betray them. The breaking point came when Dylan showed up at my apartment unannounced, claiming he wanted to clear the air about some family business matters. I knew he was fishing for information about what I might know, but I also knew the FBI was monitoring his communications. Every desperate move he made was being documented as evidence. "Serafina, I have been thinking about our conversation last week," he said, even though we had not discussed anything significant. "You seemed upset about something. Is everything okay with the building? Are there any problems I should know about?" I forced myself to look confused. "What do you mean, everything is fine? Why would there be problems?" "No reason," he said quickly. "I just want to make sure you know you can come to family if you ever need help with anything. Business decisions, legal issues, whatever. We stick together, right?" "Of course," I replied, fighting the urge to tell him I already knew about his criminal conspiracy. Family always sticks together. After he left, I called Agent Kellerman to report the conversation. She was pleased but not surprised. "He is scared," she said. "Something has spooked them, which means they might accelerate their timeline. Are you ready for this to happen faster than we planned?" I thought about Rachel losing her restaurant, about all the other victims Walsh and my family had destroyed, about the banner hanging in my building that proclaimed their imaginary ownership. "I have been ready for months," I told her. "Let us end this." The trap was about to be sprung, and my family had no idea what was coming for them. The day of reckoning arrived on a crisp Tuesday morning in October. My family had scheduled their fake property transfer ceremony for 10 in the morning, complete with champagne and a photographer, to document their historic family business milestone. They had invited extended family members, business associates, and even some local media contacts to witness what they believed would be their greatest triumph. I arrived at my building at 9:30, accompanied by Agent Kellerman and a full team of federal investigators posing as my business consultants. Hidden cameras had been installed throughout the property the night before, and surveillance vans were positioned strategically around the block. Every word, every gesture, every criminal act was about to be captured in high definition. "Remember, let them dig their own graves," Agent Kellerman whispered as we walked through the lobby. "The deeper they go, the stronger our case becomes." My family was already there, bustling around the main conference room like they owned the place. Dylan had brought a banner reading, "Ravenwood Family Enterprises, Building Our Legacy Together," and was directing workers to hang it prominently behind the head table. My parents were arranging flowers and setting up a makeshift bar. Grandmother Vivian was practicing a speech she planned to give about family values and shared success. The corrupt lawyer, Gregory Walsh, arrived precisely at 10, carrying a briefcase full of fraudulent documents. He was a thin, sharp-faced man in an expensive suit who radiated the kind of slimy confidence that came from years of successful crime. When he saw me, he smiled like we were old friends. "Serafina, congratulations on this exciting family milestone," he said, shaking my hand with theatrical warmth. "Your family has spoken so highly of your hard work in finding this perfect property for the trust." I wanted to punch him, but instead I smiled sweetly. "Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I am just so grateful my family has been looking out for my best interests all along." The formal ceremony began with Dylan giving a presentation about the family vision for the building. He outlined renovation plans, tenant recruitment strategies, and profit projections, like he was a legitimate businessman instead of a common thief. Every word he spoke was being recorded by federal agents as evidence of his intent to steal my property. "As we transition this asset into proper family management," Dylan announced to the assembled crowd, "we want to recognize that Serafina's individual efforts have been instrumental in identifying this opportunity. However, as outlined in the Ravenwood Family Trust documents, commercial properties of this magnitude rightfully belong under collective family oversight." The audience applauded politely, having no idea they were witnessing the commission of multiple federal crimes. Several of my extended family members looked uncomfortable with Dylan's speech, but none of them questioned the legitimacy of what was happening. Then Walsh stood up to begin the fake legal transfer. He spread the fraudulent documents across the table and started explaining how the trust paperwork superseded my individual ownership. Every lie he told was being captured by hidden microphones and cameras. "As you can see from these documents," Walsh said, pointing to forged signatures and fake notary seals, "the Ravenwood Family Trust was established prior to Miss Serafina's property purchase. This means the building was always intended to be a family asset, regardless of which family member physically completed the transaction." My mother actually teared up during this speech. "We are so proud of how our family supports each other," she said. "This building represents everything we value: hard work, unity, and shared prosperity." I had to bite my tongue to keep from screaming that she was a lying criminal who had forged my signature dozens of times over the past month. The moment of truth arrived when Walsh produced the final transfer documents and asked me to sign away my building to the fake family trust. The papers looked official to anyone who did not know they were completely fraudulent. My supposed signature had already been forged on most of the supporting documents. "Serafina, if you would just sign here," Walsh said, pointing to the signature line. "This will finalize the trust arrangement and ensure your building is properly protected under family ownership." I picked up the pen, looked around the room at my smiling family members, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Before I sign anything, I have one question. How exactly did my family manage to create a trust document for a building I bought with my own money?" The room went dead silent. Walsh's confident smile faltered for just a moment before he recovered. "As I explained, the trust was established to protect family assets. Your individual purchase was always intended to benefit the entire family." "That is interesting," I continued, still holding the pen, "because I never agreed to any family trust. In fact, I paid for this building entirely with my own savings and my own loan, so I am curious how you have legal documents showing otherwise." Dylan stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and panic. "Serafina, what are you doing? We discussed this as a family. You know this property belongs to all of us." "Actually, Dylan, we never discussed anything. You and your partners have been planning to steal my building while pretending to support my success. The only thing I want to know is whether you really thought you could get away with it." That was the signal Agent Kellerman had been waiting for. Federal agents emerged from every doorway, badges, visible weapons drawn. "FBI. Nobody move. This is a federal raid." The chaos that followed was absolutely beautiful. Dylan tried to run but was tackled by 2 agents before he reached the exit. Walsh frantically attempted to destroy the fraudulent documents but was stopped mid-shred by Agent Kellerman herself. My parents stood frozen in shock, still holding champagne glasses like they were posing for a family photo. Grandmother Vivian, the woman who had helped plan every detail of the theft, had the audacity to look confused and innocent. "Officers, there must be some mistake," she said in her sweetest elderly lady voice. "We are just having a family business meeting." "Ma'am, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, mail fraud, and theft of property exceeding $1 million, Agent Kellerman replied. "You have the right to remain silent." As the handcuffs went on, my family members one by one, I felt a combination of satisfaction and sadness that I had not expected. These people had betrayed me in the worst possible way, but they were still my family. Watching them get arrested was justice, but it was also the final destruction of every relationship I had valued most. The assembled guests were questioned and released, but not before several of them expressed shock and disgust at what they had witnessed. My extended family members who had attended the fake ceremony were horrified to learn they had almost become accessories to a federal crime. Dylan was the last to be arrested, and as the agents led him away, he looked at me with pure hatred. "You destroyed this family," he snarled. "Everything we built together is gone because of you." I looked him straight in the eye and said, "No, Dylan. You destroyed this family when you decided to steal from me. I just made sure you faced the consequences." As the FBI led my family away in handcuffs, I stood alone in my building, surrounded by the wreckage of their failed celebration. The banner Dylan had hung still proclaimed, "Building our legacy together," but now it felt like a monument to their arrogance and stupidity. The criminal empire they had built was collapsing, and I was just getting started. The aftermath of the arrests moved faster than I had expected. Within 24 hours, the story was everywhere. "Local family arrested in multi-million-dollar real estate fraud" dominated the headlines, complete with photos of my parents, Dylan, and grandmother Vivian being led away in handcuffs. The local news even interviewed some of the guests who had attended the fake transfer ceremony, and their shocked reactions were broadcast repeatedly. But the media attention was nothing compared to what happened when the federal prosecutors unsealed the full indictment 3 days later. My family was not just charged with stealing my building, they were part of a massive criminal conspiracy that had defrauded dozens of victims across multiple states. Gregory Walsh had been running his fake trust scheme for over 7 years, and my family had been among his most enthusiastic participants. The charges were staggering. Each family member faced multiple counts of wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, and identity theft. Dylan had additional charges related to his business fraud activities. Walsh himself was charged with racketeering and running a continuing criminal enterprise. If convicted on all counts, they were looking at decades in federal prison. Agent Kellerman called me with updates as the investigation expanded. "Your family kept meticulous records of everything they stole," she told me. "We found detailed spreadsheets showing how they divided the proceeds from previous victims. Rachel's restaurant was just the beginning. They have been stealing from relatives and family friends for years." The evidence was overwhelming. Federal agents had seized computers, phones, and filing cabinets full of incriminating documents from my family's homes. They found forged signatures, fake notary seals, and detailed plans for future fraud schemes. My mother had actually kept a diary documenting their crimes, apparently thinking she was recording family business strategies. One entry from my mother's diary was particularly devastating. "Serafina is so trusting. It almost feels unfair sometimes. But she has more money than she knows what to do with, and families should share resources. Dylan needs this building for his company, and she will understand eventually. We are teaching her important lessons about family loyalty." Reading that made me feel physically sick. Even while planning to destroy my life, my mother had convinced herself she was doing me a favor. The financial investigation revealed the true scope of their crimes. Over the past 5 years, my family had stolen approximately $4.7 million from various victims using Walsh's services. They had targeted successful family members, family friends who trusted them, and even elderly relatives who depended on their help managing finances. My cousin Rachel's restaurant had been worth $800,000 when they stole it. My great-uncle Frank had lost his retirement savings when my parents convinced him to invest in a fake family business venture. Even my grandmother's neighbor, an elderly widow named Mrs. Patterson, had been defrauded out of her late husband's life insurance money after my grandmother gained her trust. "Your family preyed on people who loved them," Agent Kellerman explained. "That is what makes this case so disturbing. They used family relationships and trust as weapons to steal from vulnerable people." But while the federal case was building, my family was experiencing the immediate social consequences of their crimes. Within a week of their arrests, they had lost almost everything that mattered to them. Dylan's marketing company collapsed when clients fled after learning about his fraud charges. My parents were forced to resign from the various charity boards and social organizations they had joined using their stolen money. Grandmother Vivian was asked to leave her church and her bridge club. The community shunning was swift and merciless. People who had once admired my family's success now realized it had all been built on crime. Former friends refused to take their phone calls. Business associates publicly distanced themselves from any connection to the Ravenwood name. Even extended family members began cutting ties, afraid of being associated with convicted felons. I heard about their social collapse through my cousin Rachel, who had maintained connections with some family members throughout her own ordeal. "Your parents are completely isolated now," she told me. "Nobody wants to be seen with them. They went from being the successful branch of the family to being complete outcasts in less than a week." The financial consequences were equally devastating. Federal prosecutors had frozen all of their assets pending restitution proceedings. The expensive cars, jewelry, and home renovations they had bought with stolen money were all seized as evidence. My parents' house was put up for sale to pay back their victims. Dylan's downtown condo was foreclosed on when he could not make the mortgage payments from jail. Even more satisfying was learning that their legal defense was falling apart. Walsh's attorney had immediately offered to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence, which meant he was providing detailed testimony about my family's crimes. Several other victims had come forward with additional evidence. The case against my family was so strong that even expensive defense lawyers were advising them to plead guilty. "Your family's attorneys have been calling our office asking about plea deals," the federal prosecutor handling the case informed me. "They know they cannot win at trial, so they are trying to minimize their prison sentences." But I was not interested in making deals with people who had tried to destroy my life. When the prosecutor asked if I would support reduced sentences in exchange for guilty pleas, I told him exactly what I thought. "These people spent months planning to steal everything I worked for," I said. "They forged my signature, lied to my face, and celebrated their crimes like they were accomplishments. They destroyed other people's lives for years before they targeted me. I want them to face the full consequences of what they chose to do." The prosecutor nodded approvingly. "That is what we hoped you would say. This case is about more than just your building. It is about sending a message that family relationships do not protect people from the consequences of serious crimes." Meanwhile, I was rebuilding my life without the people who had pretended to love me while planning my destruction. The building they had tried to steal was now fully mine again, legally and emotionally. I had started renting office space to legitimate businesses, and the income was even better than I had projected. More importantly, I had discovered who my real family was. Rachel and I had grown closer through our shared experience of being victimized by the same people. Other family members who had been distant or suspicious of my parents' sudden wealth reached out to offer support and friendship. Even some family friends who had been deceived by my parents apologized and asked to maintain relationships with me. I was learning that chosen family could be stronger than blood family. The people who stood by me during the worst experience of my life were worth more than the people who had shared my DNA, but not my values. But even as I moved forward, I knew the final chapter of this story was still being written. My family's trial was approaching, and I would have to face them in court one more time. The thought of seeing them again filled me with dread and anticipation in equal measure. They had tried to steal my future. Now it was time for them to face theirs. 8 months after that devastating night when I discovered my family's betrayal, I stood in the federal courthouse waiting to give my victim impact statement at their sentencing hearing. The trial had lasted 3 weeks, and the jury had taken less than 4 hours to find all of them guilty on every count. Gregory Walsh had already been sentenced to 15 years in federal prison after his cooperation deal fell through, when prosecutors discovered he had been lying about other criminal activities. Walking into that courtroom was one of the hardest things I had ever done. My parents sat at the defendant's table looking older and smaller than I remembered. Dylan stared straight ahead, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Grandmother Vivian, now 83 years old, sat hunched in her wheelchair, the weight of her crimes having aged her dramatically over the past months. For a moment, looking at these broken people, I felt a flicker of the old family loyalty that had made me so vulnerable to their manipulation. Then I remembered the banner they had hung in my building, the champagne they had opened to celebrate stealing from me, and the diary entry where my mother had called their theft a learning experience for me. When my turn came to address the court, I walked to the podium with a speech I had written and rewritten dozens of times. I looked directly at each of them as I spoke. "Your Honor, these defendants did not just steal my building. They stole my ability to trust my belief in family loyalty and my faith in the people who raised me. They took something more valuable than money. They took the security that comes from knowing your family will protect you rather than prey on you." I paused to let that sink in, watching my mother's face crumple as she realized I was not going to ask for mercy. But they also gave me something unexpected. They taught me that real family is not about blood or shared history. Real family is about people who support your success instead of sabotaging it, who celebrate your achievements instead of stealing them, and who love you enough to tell you the truth, even when it hurts. My father finally looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. For a split second, I saw the man who had taught me to ride a bicycle and helped me with homework. Then I remembered that the same hands had forged my signature on dozens of fraudulent documents. I have found my real family now, I continued. They include my cousin Rachel, who survived their previous crimes and helped me fight back. They include the FBI agents who believed me when I reported this conspiracy. They include the neighbors' friends and business associates who stood by me when my blood relatives tried to destroy me. These people proved that family is a choice, not an accident of birth. When I finished speaking, the courtroom was completely silent. Judge Morrison, a veteran federal judge known for harsh sentences in white-collar crime cases, delivered the verdicts that would define the rest of their lives. Dylan received 12 years in federal prison for his leadership role in the conspiracy. My parents each received 10 years for their extensive participation in multiple fraud schemes. Grandmother Vivian, despite her age, received 8 years because the judge determined her crimes were too serious to ignore regardless of her advanced years. The defendants in this case betrayed the most fundamental bonds of human trust, Judge Morrison said as he imposed the sentences. They weaponized family relationships to commit serious crimes against people who loved them. The damage they caused goes far beyond financial losses. They destroyed their victims' ability to trust the people closest to them. As the bailiffs led my family away to begin their prison sentences, not one of them looked back at me. Even facing the consequences of their crimes, they could not bring themselves to show remorse or take responsibility for what they had chosen to do. But I was no longer waiting for their apology or their acknowledgement. I had built a new life without them, and it was better than anything I could have imagined when I was still trying to earn their approval. The building they had tried to steal had become the foundation of a thriving business empire. I now owned 3 commercial properties and had started a property management company that specialized in helping other victims of real estate fraud. My first client was my cousin Rachel, who used the restitution money from her lawsuit to buy a new restaurant. This time, she put the property in a legitimate trust that actually protected her interests. The media attention from my family's case had brought me opportunities I never expected. I was invited to speak at conferences about financial fraud prevention and family business ethics. A major publisher approached me about writing a book about surviving family betrayal. Several law schools asked me to guest lecture about the warning signs of trust and estate fraud. But the most meaningful change was personal. I had learned to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. My chosen family included people who had proven their loyalty through actions, not just words. We supported each other's success instead of competing for resources. We celebrated each other's achievements instead of trying to diminish them. Rachel and I had grown especially close, bonding over our shared experience of being victimized by people we trusted. She was the sister I had always wanted, someone who understood the unique pain of family betrayal, but also the strength that comes from surviving it. You know what the best part is, Rachel told me recently as we walked through my original building, now fully renovated and profitable. They thought they were so smart, so much cleverer than us. But in the end, their arrogance destroyed them while we rebuilt our lives into something better than they ever were. She was right. My family had been so focused on stealing what I had built that they never bothered to create anything legitimate for themselves. Their entire lifestyle had been based on crime and deception. When that collapsed, they had nothing left. Meanwhile, I had used their betrayal as motivation to build something stronger and more meaningful than anything they could have imagined. The building they tried to steal was now the headquarters of a business empire built on honesty, hard work, and genuine relationships. Standing in my office, looking out at the city skyline through windows they had tried to claim as their own, I felt something I had never experienced during my years of trying to please my biological family: complete peace with who I was and what I had accomplished. They had tried to teach me that family loyalty meant accepting their theft and manipulation. Instead, they taught me that real loyalty means protecting the people you love from harm, even when the biggest threat comes from within your own family. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold people accountable for their choices, even when those people share your blood. Especially when those people share your blood. Now, as I watch this story resonate with so many of you, I want to ask, have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own integrity? Have you experienced the pain of realizing that the people who were supposed to protect you were actually the ones causing you harm? Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts, because these family karma stories teach us all something about the difference between toxic loyalty and genuine love. If this story helped you recognize similar patterns in your own life, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life justice stories that prove truth really is stranger than fiction. Share this with someone who needs to hear that chosen family can be stronger than blood family. And remember that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to respect the boundaries you deserve. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to justice. And remember that your real family will always be the people who celebrate your success instead of trying to steal it.